Hi, I'm David Gans. Deadhead TV was a wonderful example of community journalism created and staffed by skilled and passionate fellow Deadheads. When Deadhead TV arrived in the late 1980s, I was a working music journalist and the host of the Deadhead Hour, so I was thrilled when they invited me to contribute from time to time. One of my favorite collaborations with DTV was an interview with Candace Brightman, the Grateful Dead's lighting director from 1972 through 1995. She was very generous with her time. She told us how she came to work for the Dead, and she shared some delightful stories. We learned a lot about how light and sound interact in the creative wonderland of a Grateful Dead show. I'm so glad these wonderful Deadhead TV programs were recently pulled out of the archive and are now available, and I'm delighted to see the uncut version of my interview with Candace. Here's part 2 of 2. Enjoy.
Do you get much feedback from the musicians?
No.
Well, I know they don't see what they look like from out there.
Here's another one. Here's another funny thing. I asked Jerry a couple of years ago, I guess it's been that long, if he was bothered, or I guess, I don't know, they were all there, and but I asked Jerry if he was bothered, if they were bothered by the lights for the other one. I said, does this bother you? Thinking, there's like one light on at a time, they're going on all over the place. They can't see each other to relate as a band to each other. So I was asking Jerry what he thought of the lights for the other one from this point of view, thinking obviously I'm not asking for a critique of the lights. How would he know? He's on stage. And he said, "What do you mean? What do I think of the lights?" I said, "Well, do you have a problem with the lights for the other one?" He said, "No." He said, I'm sorry, but I just can't see the lights from where I am, so it would be hard for me to give you an opinion of what they look like." And I said, no, I mean, like, there's only like one light on. It's a strobes on, and then it's off at a time, and it's all of them is flashing all over the room, and you can't see each other. And he said, "Oh, really?" And everyone looked at me like, "Oh, really?" And no one seemed to know that happens during the other one.
That's understandable.
It is?
Well, as I've been a musician too for a number of years, and never in any kind of arena-sized stage or anything, but I've played in various situations, and lately played with the light show behind me and stuff. And when you're playing and you're concentrating and the music is happening for you, a revolution could start off the stage, and you wouldn't know it.
But don't you need to be able to see?
Yeah, but
other
it's
people?
amazing how little light you need for that, I think.
But see, the difference here is that there's no light. Normally there's some little thing. You might not see it from in the house because it takes very little for visibility on the stage. Very little.
Yeah.
So little that you really can hardly see it. But in the other one, there's just random individual lights, and sometimes those are in the audience only. Or you have a light flash you in the eyes and then it's gone. So it would seem to me that
I would think by the time they actually need to visually cue each other, you've normalized things a little more. I mean, I would imagine what he was telling you was that the place where the lights are bouncing like that is a period when he's hunched over like this. He's doing this.
Right.
He's not thinking about it. He doesn't need to look for Bob until things are beginning to wind down a little bit. So.
Yeah.
Do you have favorite songs, or like? Do you have an ongoing relationship with certain pieces that you have, like, you're developing ideas? Because one of the things let me preface that by saying that one of the things I wrote in my notebook after that Greek theater show was I suddenly realized that you were investing your work with meaning too, just like Dan and just like the band are. That it occurred to me that you're sort of directing the emotional undercurrent of the music a lot with your lighting effects. And I could see, I mean, the band, I know the musicians have an ongoing relationship with the songs, and every once in a while, a new emotional corner will illuminate itself, you know, in the performance.
Yes.
And I think that you can underscore that and even guide that at times.
Well, I don't know. There's been times when I've thought that I actually could affect what was going on with lights. What did you mean, guide?
I mean that, possibly affect, but it could even be as simple as like what you're thinking about. Are you, or maybe what the question is how much are you listening to the song? Because to the fan out there listening, sometimes a lyric line will come at you and tell you something brand new that sheds new light on everything else you know.
Well, the lighting results, and this is the lighting results from listening to a song or hearing something new in a tune that I haven't heard before, either musically or the way that it's being sung, and those changes are always occurring. I notice them especially in what Brent's doing and Jerry's phrasing of things. That it's just constantly new things going on there. But any lighting that I do as a response to something new is generally the result of listening to tapes or hearing it during a show and writing notes. I write notes during the shows, big scrawly notes that later on, fairly soon after the show, sometimes the night after the show, I'll just go over my notes so that they're legible and I know what it is I want to do. And I'll get inspirations about that either during the show or listening to tapes. But what I'm acting on during a show is usually by the time you're hearing those things, not usually, but actually I think it's pretty safe to say that by the time you're hearing those things, they've already happened, or they're happening. So no, you know, the way a tune is being played will move me to respond to it in a certain way, but just the feeling behind it, you know what I mean? A certain kind of energy or a certain kind of laid back approach. I've noticed that, where is it? Maybe, I don't know. There are some tunes where Jerry has consistently been laying back a little bit more, like Scarlet Fire, Fire on the Mountain. He seems to be a little bit more subdued in those instrumentals than I had as a result of listening to some earlier tapes. And just as a result of the way they used to be played over the years, it evolved this kind of bombast. I haven't used that word in a while. I love that word. This sort of this big approach to his instrumentals, and then now it seems to me he's being more conservative.
So I can see how that would be. Sometimes you could almost find yourself at odds with that. Like you might be disappointed that he's toning it down.
Sure, you could just sail out there, you know, and there you are, and bingo, they're on stage. Like, oh, really? That's not the way we're playing it. You know, you can make those mistakes, which are kind of funny. I mean,
well, give me an example of having. Have you ever had them really like hang you out to dry, where your intuition?
Yeah, I wish I could give you specific. Oh yes, and I think it is funny. I mean, I feel bad about it.
Not where they did it on purpose, but where you anticipated a musical.
I think they do it on purpose sometimes. Well, no, I don't think Well, anyway, yes. Unfortunately, I can't give you specific examples. If I think of it in the course of this conversation, but I don't know what they are. One of them I've noticed is the Fire on the Mountain. I was kind of too heavy-handed there, but I don't think, in fact, I think Jerry's playing it in a more reserved way. Maybe there's a lot of other places where that's happening, where there's just a difference in emphasis, and I don't know.
I think in the last year, what I notice is when they're working on a record or when they're working new material, you hear about it everywhere in their set because they're more musically interactive. You know what I mean? Like when there's new stuff going on, everybody is hearing the music anew, and you'll hear benefits in other tunes. You know, I think that one place it pays off is in increased dynamics when they're in a mode of being more learning each other more, like working new material. They're much more dynamic because the people who are better listeners or people who aren't such good listeners are listening more at that point, you know. So it's also a place where every once in a while a clunker will come through, but the overall feeling is much more creative and energetic, you know. That you know when they're learning each other, when there's When the band, when the big guy is learning something, you know, when the individuals are paying more attention or something.
I don't know. I think that I would notice that more in listening to tapes. I could be guilty of being a little bit insensitive in some ways to things like that in the live situation. And
maybe
only
you would
notice
read
them
it
later
not
on.
so much in the detail, because I'm not busy.
Yeah, I'm definitely
not trying to do
tuned.
1,000 things while I'm listening, as you are. So, you know, I'm
Yeah.
concentrating on the music and I'm ready for the nuance, but
I just find
suspect that you're getting it in a subliminal way. I mean,
yeah.
it's the progression.
Yes, I think that
over
I am because
time.
I know that I'm very, I hope I am. I know that I'm very, very tuned into that show, and then I'm able, as I get more comfortable with this gear, to get even more tuned into it. But it's always true when I listen to a tape that I'm just amazed at what I hear. You know, I hear all sorts of details that I don't hear in the live show, which is not, I'm sure, I know they're there in the live show. I also have one ear on headsets.
Mm-hmm. Now that's a nice bridge into the next question about how you communicate with the light people and how many there are and what sort of stuff is up there. Is it time to talk about that yet?
Yeah. Let's see. Where shall we start there? That's changed, my way of relating to the people that I'm working with has changed drastically in the last few months. I'm almost at the point now where I could take off those headsets, and I often do now. During shifts, it's so nice to be able to do that. The person who's working with me now is the Q-spot operator. And the Q-spots are what has replaced the follow spots. They're follow spots whose iris and color are controlled by us at the booth. And in this case now it's by a guy named Mike Hall. And so so the light is aimed, the Q-spots, which are 8 lights up in the lighting truss, operated by 8 men. What they're doing is aiming the lights. They have a laser sight on the light. And so they can see where it is when it's not on. And then Mike Hall opens those dowsers or turns them on whenever he wants them and changes the color and uses some effects. And he has the same color and effects. He has the same lights that I have. It's the same. The Q-spot is the same as a Panaspot, only it's operated by a man. Or a woman.
What's the difference? I was going to ask, is it invariably a man, or are there women?
He's IA, local IA.
And is it always
union
local
crews.
people in every town?
Yeah, always.
So the touring light crew is
It's
just
4 people who work for Morpheus. Right now it's Mike Hall out at the booth, and Bill Strom, and Joe Ham, and Jeff Metter. And they have been the Dead's Morpheus Lights crew since September, for the fall tour. It started in the fall tour. And so the 3 of them are basically fixing lights between sets. Lots, they break down a lot. All these lights do. Both the major robotic light is kind of a sensitive piece of equipment, so they're always breaking down and having to be fixed.
But what's
and Mike
the
Hall
difference?
operates the Panaspot, the Q-spots, and so what's the control of the thing is basically me and Mike Hall, and what I'm trying to do is to just let Mike do his thing with the Panaspots, and although I'm also now writing a program just writing it like cues on a HyperCard program that's got all the Grateful Dead tunes in it and the lyrics in it. And so that he will know what the cues are in the tunes, so he knows what to do with the follow spots. But what I'd like to do is to just let him do that so I can really be free to listen to the music.
You said that the lights, the Panaspots and the Q-spots are the same hardware?
Exactly.
What is the difference?
The only difference is
then?
pan and tilt.
But why? So what do you get from having a human operating it that you don't get by having the machines operate it?
Well, I couldn't program following Bob around.
Okay, so that's the thing that
And
has to be
even
done
the little bit of movement that they do, you can't really program it. I mean, they're moving. And the 4, you notice I said 8. Each band member has 2 lights on them, but the drums are stationary, are actually Panaspots, focused in one position. and then the 4 people downstage have the manned cue spots, so that they can be followed around, so that each person has a left and a right light.
And they're all sort of at the downstage end of the, near the front of the stage.
What,
so
the lights, yeah, they're
cue
up,
spot guys.
Yeah, the cue spots are up in the truss at the very downstage.
And there are no more Super Troopers out in the hall with those guys on them? And
no, they were used. They were used at New Year's. They're used for like opening acts and things where people tend to be too far downstage, and you get that awful lighting angle, and so you want to use.
So what is saved by eliminating using those big lights out there?
If someone is really doing a rotten job, for example, you get some really bad things going on, like people will get drunk and not turn their light off. I've had a guy turn on his light in white on Jerry and during Stella Blue and flash it on and off. And what can I do about it? I can just say, "Oh my God, oh no, I don't," and look, I can't do anything about it. So now all I have to do is turn his light off because I have the control over it, you know. Now, most union guys, most IA people are wonderful. They're really good. They're very conscientious and they're really into it. There's, you know, most of them are good. Wonderful is too strong a word. There's a lot of really good people around, but some of them are just terrible, and they get out of control, and there's nothing you can do about it. So it was a real relief when I got rid of the Super Troopers. If I was lighting another band, though, I think, you know, a lot of other people that's a good look to have a light, you know, the long throw Super Trooper look. I think is really exciting and good for other bands.
Especially from the back of the house.
Yeah, but I don't think it's great for the Dead. I think I don't like the look.
Well, one of the words that always comes up in people discussing the lighting is, you know, subtle. In fact, it's only recently that the notion of lighting bombast has come up again because of the creative things that we see you doing.
Yeah.
One complaint, somebody's going to give you, in the well, somebody started a topic.
Yes,
somebody that
right,
met you,
yeah.
And I took some notes from it, but I didn't want to print it out and give it to you because I wanted the person who started the topic to give it to you. But one of the things that was in there...
Mark and Madeline.
Yeah, Mark and
Madeline,
right.
I just met them.
They'll give it to you.
Yeah.
It's interesting. People are saying mostly nice things, but trying to come up
Well,
with
I really want to
constructive
hear
criticism.
Yeah, good, okay.
Well, the one complaint I remember reading in there was something about how the other one, there's a O on the stage. They see 2 circles of light and they think that's other one. So they thought that was that's too descriptive, that you're giving it away or something.
Oh, now you just opened up a whole wealth of things to talk about. Those are also known, you know, as SpaghettiOs. When I was doing the Garcia band tour, somebody came up and said, "Candace, where are those SpaghettiOs? How come we don't have any SpaghettiOs this time?" Meaning the Panaspots, which I didn't use because they're the more expensive light, and blah, blah, blah. The band also refers to them as I don't know what kind of language we can use here, but as the fucking rings of Saturn. One good-natured band member referred to them as, you know, the circles. What were we talking about?
We were talking
lost
about
the thread.
the one complaint about about that spelling out other
Right.
one basically,
Yes.
but
Well,
I thought of it as a
of course,
rainbow
all of these
spiral
things,
around and
anything
around.
you're seeing in the lighting is deliberate and was planned by me. There's no accidents. No,
You're lying.
The other one is...
Because I remember coming up to you and complimenting you on this one really cool, colorful thing that had one single white light in the middle of it, and you said, "Oh, that was a broken light."
Right, yeah. Right.
I thought it was so creative of you.
Yeah, and then there's I love what people say. We started talking about this earlier. What people say after New Year's shows. I love to stand there and hear the things. Someone said that they loved that cue where the clouds went rolling. It was, Marmaduke. Remember Marmaduke?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he saw this, where the clouds went rolling by the sun. He really liked that. And I thought, oh, wow, you know, that's really good that's what he's seeing.
Did you have any idea what he was referring to?
Not a clue. I have no idea what it is. This is something that I do, which I think is really strange. And but I guess I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. Things are too literal, I think, in the Grateful Dead lighting situation right now. I wonder if people, actually, no, I don't really want to get into naming names, because I'll just leave it. If you like it, that's fine. But I wonder if people feel that perhaps I'm not a bit too literal.
You mean using blue lights on Stella Blue and stuff?
Well, now, do you know, that was one thing that I was told by Bob Weir.
What?
He said, you know, we've decided that we think that Stella Blue should really be blue. Now, the wonderful thing about Bob, what I love about Bob that I think a lot of people miss is you can't tell when he's serious or not. So I have, and also I'm...
And he often doesn't know either until he sees
Right.
how you react.
Right. Oh, God, he's really funny. He is extremely funny. He has a great sense of humor. And of course, I'm the classic straight man. I'm the one who, you know, gets the joke 6 months later. So I don't know whether he was serious or not, but that is the only thing they've ever asked for. And
I wonder if that isn't because of so many years of playing in clubs where you could see everybody. I mean, you know, that it was always a more intimate...
I think it is more something like that.
Until the last couple of years. In fact, until that tour you guys did last summer,
the
Garcia Band was always...
Could you believe the booking of that tour? I thought, beforehand I was saying, whoa, this will never work. This is a terrible idea. You know, I don't know about you, but I think it's really terrible. It was a great tour. I mean, I liked it. I don't know if Jerry liked it. I think for him it was too much of a... too much fuss and bother over what's supposed to be a simple, nice, easy-going, pleasant experience.
I think that the money-making factor came into play there.
He's not into it.
Well, no,
I mean,
but
you can definitely say
I've
that
had
Jerry
discussions with
is
Cutler
not
and,
interested in making more money. You
well,
know?
there are lots of people around him who are. So,
right.
You know, that gets. I think that sort of factor was part of it, but.
But I kind of liked it for me, it was like the Grateful Dead that's the wrong way of putting it. It was nice to be in this big venue situation without all the bullshit. We were on the bus. There was one bus. We weren't pampered, and I really think everybody's pampered way too much. Of course, I'm so busy that I could care less. They could have cornflakes and Kentucky Fried Chicken, and that'd be fine for me, you know, and carrot juice. Nice to have carrot juice. So I like it simple. I've always had a wonderful time traveling on the bus. I think it's great. I kind of yearn for the simple life in a way, you know. We just had a ball on that tour. So it's selfish. My saying that the big venue Garcia Band tour was fun was just purely from a selfish point of view. It was nice to do the big places with a simple system, and I think it actually sort of worked as a lighting system. God, it was simple and inexpensive and easy to use. And then I could start the shows without worrying about programming and stuff, because there wasn't that much to it. It was just simple and a lot of fun. I had fun. But I think that Jerry was didn't really like it because it was too big.
For what he does with that band.
Yeah, he's supposed to be more of a relaxing experience for him. But also Clarence was supposed to be more of a he's supposed to be able to hand the ball to Clarence, and Clarence tends not to play that role that he was expected to play, you know. Anyway, back to...
Might have benefited from a little rehearsal and discussion, of course, but that's another story.
Rehearsal, yes.
Yeah, well.
Well, we all know how we're all experts on how the Grateful Dead should do things. Yes.
Yeah, there's that notion of perfectibility.
Yeah, it would be great. I think we should have...
If I ran the Grateful Dead...
I think we should have like a forum or something where they all sit there and everyone gets together and says all the things that they think should happen. Now, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? But I'd like to hear a little of that myself, a little why aren't I doing this? Because I have a feeling some wonderful ideas some good things might happen as a result of that.
Do people come up to you at gigs and say, I've invented a new thing I want you to see, or things like that? Or
invented a new...
Or just with suggestions or whatever?
Some, but they're not as useful. So far I haven't run into anything that's just knocked my socks off, but I'm really interested. And then lots of times there's just things that either cost too much or, you know, but I don't want to sound so negative. I'm really, I want to hear new things. What I was thinking of was more in terms of just ideas, things that can be done with existing.
If you're not careful, from now on, after every show, there'll be a bunch of people behind the board ready to do notes with you.
Okay, folks, let's do notes. Right. Well, Candace, I really didn't like the way you did this. This was a little late, and that was a nasty color you used.
I always tell people, you know, being working with the Grateful Dead and the Deadheads is like working with, you know, a million producers, because everybody knows how it should
And
be
this
done.
business that I was talking about earlier with the flash pots, I had no idea. When I closed, was a tour, the end of a tour, and we were in Binghamton, and they did Not Fade Away, and I did Not Fade Away, bang, flash pots, big, heavily loaded flash pots. And I had only told Kreutzmann because one of them was kind of near him, and the other ones were far away. So, and he kept it secret. Kreutzmann is definitely the prankster. He definitely, you know, he was into it and perfectly happy not to tell anybody else in the band. So this tremendous explosion went off. We had practiced it in the hallway, so it was safe and it wasn't too loud. Earlier in the afternoon, this explosion went off, and everybody in the band jumped. They gave me dirty looks. I don't think they particularly liked it. But it was very funny. To me, it was funny, and it was funny to see their reaction. I thought it was great. And then people came up to me after the show. No. You know, this one person that I was telling you came up and said, "I don't know how long you've been with the Grateful Dead, but you know, this just isn't done. We don't use flash pots with the Grateful Dead. We don't use flash pots." And I said, "Oh, you know, right, okay." I just, you know, they just didn't get the joke, I guess. It was a joke. It was a joke on the Grateful Dead. And they really were surprised.
Well, it's like the last thing, you know, what's one of those stock things about the Dead? They don't use smoke machines and flash pots because, you know, so to have a flash pot show up, hey, you know, if you had done a whole tour with them, it would be another story.
Yeah.
You know,
everything
who would begrudge you one use of it?
Right, yeah, it is. I would like to get more humor into the lights, and there are, you know, some things that I'd like to see humor happening in the shows. I'd like to do more of that. I don't really know how to do it.
Yeah, it's tough to imagine how you would, but, well, you could always use, you know, like a really bad orange sort of light on stellar blue.
Yes, you can do.
Counterpoint, color counterpoint.
Right, yeah. But if you ever see something that really does look funny, there's a good chance it's meant to be. If I ever figure out how to do it, I definitely will jump at the
W when the
chance.
wheel starts.
Right. Well, now, see, there's this literal business again.
Describe what you mean by being too literal.
I don't think I want to get into that. Let's just...
Shall we get back to you a year later and see if we can spot instances of literalism in your work?
You'll be able to.
Okay. Well, let's talk about color then. How you use color. What you do
How
with it.
you use color.
Yeah, I mean, people. In fact, there's another guy that I know in the Well, who came up with this whole theory about. I mean, it was like a joke, and it wasn't a serious theory, but it was a fun theory to talk about. He sort of kept track of the washes, like the color washes that you'd use before certain songs, like if you were using lights between the songs and stuff.
There is no rhyme or reason to the color. I have to say that there is really not. The color is purely. I'm pretty much purely into it for the color. And the reason that you can't get too consistent with the color theory is because there is no order to the tune. So you might have just gotten into using something that you're using because it's appropriate, and then the next tune it might have even been more appropriate for, but oops, too bad for that. You know, you can't do it because you just did it. So there's an order. There's an order to... a lot of what's happening in one tune is dictated by what happened in the tune that preceded. You don't want to do the same thing over again twice in a row. So color is, for me, it's just not an intellectual thing. Maybe there's something I'm doing with color that I don't know about, but I'm not very conscious about it. I try to get things that are beautiful. I try to get things that are happy and cheery. Some tunes should look sunny and upbeat and kind of pastel-ish, and yellow might be the most high saturated color. Other things would be pale pinks and pale lavenders like Sugar Magnolia. Music Never Stops. West LA Fade Away tends to be high saturated. Heavy duty colors are really wild colors. And that's a tune that I really have a lot of ideas for that I haven't had a chance to program.
West LA?
Yeah, I can't wait to get some. Well, you can't when am I going to?
No, I mean, what is it about that tune that makes it so suggestive?
It's very dramatic. Jarid does some really powerful, reliable instrumentals on that you can really be dramatic with, and I feel that what I've been doing now with that has been unimaginative because I haven't got. There's some stuff that there's so much that I want to program that But I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm not going to worry about it too much until I get around to programming it, and then the new things will be there. But there's some real exciting possibilities. It's one like the other one. When I figured out when I thought up the way the other one looks, when that hit me, I just knew that was right. I was really excited about that. And then it took a while. Yeah, that's this business. Then it took a while to get that program. That was pretty simple in a way because it's just a matter of timing it, and then I've learned that you just leave the timing open and vary the time as the cue goes on. But there's
Can you vary the tempo on a preset or a thing like that? The rate of
let's
shifting through that?
Let's do what makes what goes into what you see when you're seeing a lighting look or a lighting event or whatever they are. There's the equipment side of things, which is basically the two lights, the hard edge Panaspot and the soft edge Panabeam, or PC spot and PC beam. That's the new name for it. I tend to call them by their own names. It's the spot and the beam. And Very Lights there's the two lighting companies that basically make the best of this equipment, and it's Very Lights and Morpheus. And there's a lot of similarities. Morpheus's light is better, I think, even by Very Light's admission. It does more. And so the spot has got pan and tilt functions, which combined point the light where it goes. And those are generally recorded in what I call focus memories. I don't know what other people call them. There's no real set routine for this because nobody ever teaches you anything. You just get the gear. And when they've updated the software on it, you don't know until you do something like, oh, look, that's different. And then you kind of figure out, well, maybe you just figure it out. They don't tell you anything. Morpheus is funny that way. So there's pan and tilt in all the lights, but let's start with the pan spot. And then there's color, which is done with dichroic filters, there's 3 filters, and they're rolled in, they're on wheels. And depending on where you have the wheel in relation to the aperture of the light, you have that color dialed in there. And there's what would it be? What are the video? There's cyan, magenta, and what's the yellow color? Anyway, there's the 3 primary colors.
Red, green, and blue.
Red, green, and green and blue are the primary colors of light, but then they use the sort of the secondary colors, and I just forget what they are. Cyan, magenta, and the third color. We should know. Certainly I should know, but I don't. Some people out there are going to be saying, I can't believe you don't know this. So they are, each one of those primary colors is inscribed on these wheels, on these color wheels in color gradations, low saturated to high saturated. And depending on which combination you have in, you can get just about any color you want. They're missing a good yellow, which I think they're working on. And so that's how the color works. And that's basically one channel of it. Well, I won't get into that. But so you have color memories. That's another kind of memory you can have. Then there are 2 gobo wheels, and on each wheel there's 4 or 5. One has 4 gobos, one has 5.
What is a gobo?
A gobo is like a cookie, or it's a opaque and clear pattern. You could have a rose. There's gobos that are put in Lycos that project images. It's a means of projecting an image. Okay. And it's just opaque, clear. It could also be color. It's a mask of some kind. It's a mask, yeah. So you get the little holes or the kind of abstract-looking breakup or a spiral kind of thing or a pinhole. Sometimes when I'm using the mirrors in front of the stage, I put the pinhole gobo in to make sure the lights are sort of laser-like small beam. And other patterns, little dots and things, stripes, and an etched circle, clear circle with an opaque circle inside, which gives you this cone of light. And then there's 2 gobo wheels, and each wheel has several gobos on the wheel, and you can, depending on which one is rolled in front of the aperture, that's the gobo that you see. Mm-hmm. So with the 2, you can roll other gobos in. Some ways I think that, in some ways, I wonder if this is going to sort of take the magic out of things. If I describe exactly what's happening, Well, it's crazy, but anyway. So I wonder about this, but we'll see. When you roll one wheel in front of the other, you get this, is one way to get this kind of scintillating effect, like in terrapin. What's happening is the lights are moving. That's a movement memory, and there's nothing happening to the dowsers, so that we haven't got to that. And the gobos are moving in relation to each other, so you get this kind of movement. And you're just going to different combinations of gobos with each other. Another way to get a gobo to move is to spin it. The gobos in one of the gobo wheels, each gobo spins. Now, forget it with the very light. I mean, none of this happens. That's why I really like the Panispots. I like anyway. So the control on very lights is wonderful. It's just one thing. You can do anything you want. You don't have to, it's really much easier to run, but the equipment itself isn't.
So each, on the ones you're using, then the parameters are separately controlled?
Yeah, it takes a lot more programming, it takes more time, and it's more spread out all over the place. It's a little harder to do, but if you can do it fast enough, you get your hands to move fast enough, or if you can figure out, when you're programming things, like when you're writing a program, you can always figure out ways to do it. This allows you more options, so it's harder and more time consuming, but then in the long run you can get exactly what you want. But do you ever get around to having the time?
You have to be a lot smarter to use it, so.
And patient, and yeah, maybe.
So you must be pretty smart and pretty patient.
No, patient. I'm learning. It's taken me a while to get into computers. Very smart and very patient, David, yeah. So we're marching down the line here through the barrel of the Panispot. What else is there? There's the dowser and the iris. So there's also, there's gobo memories, and that's another type of memory that you can have in programming. So we've talked about the focus memory, which is the pan and tilt functions of the light, and the color memory, and the gobo memory. And then you might want to have separate iris memories. I run them live. The iris is just an iris in the focal plane of the light. And the dowser.
Explain what those things are.
The iris is like a camera
opening
iris.
And closing. What is the effect of it?
It makes the light bigger and smaller.
The size of the beam?
Size of the beam.
What, does it affect the
Another
intensity
thing
of the
is the
light?
very light only has separate, they affect the size of the very light by putting a gobo with the right size in there. Clunk, you're that size.
I see.
You don't get...
So you have continuously variable iris on these?
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be better.
Yeah, and then there's the dowser, which is interesting, which is on another one of these wheels. So that one side fades to black, and the other side is just black and bump to white, bump to clear, which is a very nice function and enables you to, something that I haven't gotten into using too much yet, and Dave had those memories in there. I have to recreate those. The nice, which will probably be there for the next show, nice strobe kind of memories with this new type of dowser. It just gives you, it's a very electric, on-off kind of feeling, which when you see it, you'll know what it is. Now we have lights flashing on and off with one side of this dowser, and the other side is just a much more powerful, much sharper edged effect. It's really nice. So, I actually made a list of the different kinds of, the different memories that make a look. And we talked about the focus memories and the color and the gobo and the dowser memories. For example, when in the other one, there's a dowser memory happening. There's a focus memory that's moving the lights in a sort of abstract focus around the room. And there's various color memories, whichever one I happen to throw in at the time was in there. Then there's also something called an MQ, which I don't really want to get into because it's kind of time consuming. But each light has its own focus. Has its own movement memories built into it, I don't know whether it would be the software, the hardware, the light, how you describe it, but it's built into the light itself. And you access it by simply one of the channels that's a way of accessing each light is an MQ channel, and whatever value you give that from 1 to 100 will access a certain MQ. So that in love light, when the beams also have this function. When they're moving around, they are moving around on MQ, on a Q that's built into the light itself. So I just dialed up 1 and 2 alternate MQ memories and some other memories that are pre-designed in there and pre-programmed into the light, and they just move once you access that. Once you record a memory like that and program it in there, you know, what's the word? Punch it up,
So
and you'll see that. Now, as opposed to the movements that I program are focus areas that are focus memories. So I'll focus something on stage, and then I'll focus it in the house, and then they move around in various places. These are all individual focuses that are looped together, focus memories that are looped together. So you say when you get to this location, then you go to the next location, the next one, the next one. You can sequence them in a loop, or they can go off into some other cue altogether. Does that make sense?
I was just scratching my head. It was
Yeah.
Not a reaction.
So basically a look is made up of these different kinds of memories: color memories, gobo memories, and all of them can have movement in them, so they can loop. You know, I'll just like run up a stationary focus but have the color moving, and then go from one color loop to another where they're all moving, all changing the same color, where they're all random colors. And then if you want to do combine a lot of different effects in one move, of course you can't punch all that up at once, so you do either macros, which is just like a macro on any computer, or gold cue, which are very similar. You just you insert all these different events into the different windows, into the different places that you can run them. And pardon my English here, it's kind of hard to describe because I'm trying to do something briefly that really would take more time. But anyway, you get the look that you want by programming all these individual memories, and then you say, okay, I like this, and call this, record this as gold 1. And then every time you hit gold 1, enter, you get that look. You get all these events happening at once, which can be a stationary thing or a movement cue.
Why is it called gold?
Oh, it's just in the lighting computer. There's a couple different computers that are used for this. One of them is actually like an IBM clone. It's hard to know where to stop. But in this lighting, in this computer, in this one that's used for lighting, in what's called a commander. They always use these sort of Boy Scout terms for these, you know. But anyway, the commander has it's a takeoff on what used to be a performer lighting controller, and performers just always have what they call gold cues. A gold cue means it grabs a number of different functions and throws it into every window. And so you can have a major event, you know, a complex event happening without punching up all these individual numbers.
So the origin of the name gold is just an
name.
Artifact of an old thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, what are you actually looking at?
It's like a macro, you know, when you write a macro.
One command that calls a set of commands.
Exactly.
Okay. What are you looking at when you're programming? Do you have just is it one PC screen? Do you have a bunch of computers? Do you have Macintoshes?
Well, there's two. I've got two commanders. One of them controls the soft lights, which is the beams, which has less functions than a panaspot. It doesn't have the gobos. It just has color, pan, tilt, and dowser, and size. And MQ. And that's it. I promise there's no more functions. They're controlled on one commander, and the panaspots are controlled on another, because I've filled up the memory space in one commander with the panaspot, so I can't do it all on one. And also I need the additional programming windows to be able to. It's the best way to program it, to use two commanders.
In other situations, it doesn't demystify it sufficiently. You know?
Well, no, what you're saying I don't think would happen in this situation, because we're still, at least speaking for myself, I'm still kind of personally impressed by what these lights do. You know, I mean, the gear is still kind of formidable. So, yeah, in a few years we'll look back and say, oh, look at these silly little panaspots, you know, and they had these little pan and tilt motors, and we all thought it was so wonderful. But that's not, I don't think that's a problem now, at least not for, you know, because it's still kind of neat, it's still really neat, you know, I think.
I think people are as much interested in knowing, you know, who the person is, or something about, you know, how it feels to have that job, or what goes through your mind. I mean, it's gratifying to me to know that you see this as a creative job rather than as, you know, a technical thing. I mean, it's pleasing to me to know that you're up there getting off too.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's what I think that's what this is,
Well,
teaches us,
it's
is to
pleasing.
inhabit our
It's-
lives.
I'm glad that I'm finally getting to the point where I really am starting to have a good time. Yeah.
Has it really been that much of a struggle all this time?
Well, there's been more, just what I said before, that there's been, it's a little less of an uphill battle now. I'm starting to see more of what I wanted to see. So I'm able to, no, it has, I have a good time at shows, but I'm really happy now. I mean, I really feel like lots of times I just want to turn around and grab somebody and say, isn't this wonderful? You know, I'm really happy about it. It's just starting to.
Well, there are a lot of people who agree with you.
Yeah,
I mean,
although
as an
I still
example
think
also-
that there's a lot of things that are not good. There's a lot of things I want to see that aren't there. I don't feel at all self-satisfied. I just think that, we're starting to see some really nice things. Mostly it's the possibilities that I find exciting.
Well, you're in a good spot then,
Yeah.
because you're not going to get bored in the near future, are you?
No.
And that's, what more can you want from life than good
Right.
tools and an interesting gig, right?
I know, yeah, I know, it's great. It's
I mean,
really good.
one of my favorite developments in Grateful Dead land is the ability to have the MIDI right on the guitar. So when Jerry was able to switch back and forth between saxophone and guitar,
Yeah.
this is we have been waiting for 20 years for that to be
Isn't that
possible.
wonderful?
I mean, that was the stuff of science fiction stories in the 60s, and now here it is. I mean, to me, when I saw that at Shoreline, when Jerry had brought out the old guitar with that switch on it, I thought, this means 10 more years of cool shit.
I know. It's really exciting. It's really wonderful. And it's wonderful what he does with that. Brent is also very good, I think, with new things. He has no problems with incorporating new possibilities into his way of playing a show. It really seems like the big problem I keep getting back to is time. If we had more time.
Jeez, it's a bitch, ain't it?
Yeah.
If that's the biggest problem you have is finding enough
I
time
know,
to do
isn't that
all the
wonderful?
cool stuff.
I know. That's a nice situation to be in. But except that I have, when I listen to tunes now, I'm a little frustrated because I have so many ideas. I can't believe years ago I used to have trouble getting ideas. I mean, but now, anyway, my brain is just bursting with ideas. And I can't help but write them down. But I'm beginning to wonder, when will I ever have the time to really to get these things out there? Now the next step is that I've got to find a way to get this stuff out there.
You didn't cover before why that's so difficult. Could you explain that briefly?
Well, it takes a long time to program any lighting, or almost any lighting event. You have to, it doesn't, the things just don't work out when you imagine something and then try to get it to actually happen. The way that I first program it often isn't the right way. Now I'm getting better at that, and I think one of the parts of being a good lighting designer is not to waste that time, but to know in advance what it's going to look like, and so when you get in there and program it, you can program as much as possible in the shop beforehand, and then some of the things you have to be there for you can do really fast, and speed. So much of it is speed, and then we'll be able to see these things. But like for example, the thing that happened, a couple of things that happened on the other one, not the other one, on Dark Star. That was so nice, New Year's Eve. That was just so nice. And there were some things that I had just programmed in there. One of them was another sort of variation on this scintillate, this sort of sparkling light deal, which was a combination of a number of things: spinning gobos and diffraction. Oh, I forgot to mention there's also a diffraction scroll in the lights. Bringing the diffraction in just a little bit so you get a little bit of color around the edges of what's happening. Mm-hmm. And you try this different ways, and it's too fast or it's too dark. You can have so much going on between the light and the audience, but with all these effects that you can't see it. I mean, it would look, that's a problem. You don't see that. You get something if you think it's going to be great, and then you can't see it. And the speed with which it moves, the timing of the cue, and that this is something that just took a while to work out, and I had just worked it out. I had a chance. We were working on Bill's entrance, Bill's grand New Year's entrance, and which I kind of liked this year because it was really funny. I mean, the chicken thing was at least had some humor to it, and he seemed to have fun. Anyway, that had given me some time to work in the afternoon in that space. So it took a few hours to get that worked out, but that was it just takes time. It takes a few hours to work out each lighting event, basically.
Wow.
And then the other thing was that the focus of the lights on the room that was also used in Dark Star and some other places in that show was something that had taken some time to get the house lights on and to get those things focused. It just all takes time.
Do you work with Morpheus on developing the hardware too?
They listen. They've actually started listening now to me. They thought I was weird. Why couldn't I just have a box truss? Why do the trusses have to be angled? This is like years ago, and then everybody started using angled trusses, you know. And they've seen that some of the weird things that I wanted to do that were a big pain in the ass are really good things to do.
Now, so many of Grateful Dead audio is really known as a test bed for all kinds of stuff. I mean, I always, I know John Mayer, I see him up there. I know those guys are always trying something.
Yeah, that's nice.
And so many people, I don't even think the world at large knows how many cool things in the audio world came out of here and started spreading out.
And they're all doing, but yeah.
There have been a lot of ideas about miking techniques and just inventions, developments that those guys have come up with. Are there analogous developments in lighting, things that you've talked them into doing?
No,
you just said about the angled trusses
because
as an example.
basically there's much more cooperation with ultrasound and the Grateful Dead than there is with Morpheus and the Grateful Dead. And that's because to ultrasound, the Grateful Dead is the major client, and to Morpheus, the Grateful Dead is one of the major clients. And but we do, or I do, things that no one else needs. Other people just have cut and dried shows. They do industrials, they do the Pointer Sisters, whatever else they're doing. And it just doesn't apply. It's not I think in the long run it will be useful to them.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like getting back to the MIDI thing, the real world doesn't use a lot of this stuff the same way the Grateful Dead do. Like the idea of being able to do real-time changes of presets and programs and stuff is not something that's going to matter to the guy who's doing the Phil Collins tour. Because it's a matter of rehearsals and programming cues and bang, 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 there it goes, right? So I would think that the need to do real-time controlling can't help but affect in a positive way everything else that goes on in that world.
I would think so too, but the fact is I just had this conversation with the guy who runs Morpheus, with John Richardson, and it is not something that where it does come up is with awards shows and a lot of television work, but still that's only marginally applicable. Most things nobody else needs but me. A lot of things nobody else seems to want but me. And the things that other people do want get done. Some of the things that I want get done. Some of the things are incorporated into their programming. I'm always giving them lists, and every time I see John, I tell him I wish these things were happening, and some of them get done and some of them don't.
Somehow I think that adds up to a sort of a strangely lonely but uniquely satisfying gig for you.
It is a little bit, which is why I would be interested in feedback from other people.
I only have one more question for you. I hope we've covered all what these guys want. I'm curious to know what it's like being a woman in the man's world of a Grateful Dead tour.
I'm going to have to disappoint you there, Dave. I'm not really a woman. No, I'm just kidding. No. I'm asked this question all the time. What's it like to be a woman in what's generally perceived as a man's profession?
No, I don't mean the man's profession. I mean
there's a lot of women do it. Oh, in the Grateful Dead.
The macho world of the Grateful Dead.
The macho world of the Grateful Dead. I've never really had a lot of trouble with that. I don't think that I've had different problems than anybody else has in the macho world of the Grateful Dead. Everybody has a hard time. Everybody in this organization does have trouble because it's a real dog-eat-dog world, It's this real trials by fire when you're dealing with other people. You're constantly being tested. But I haven't, you know, they didn't give me a very hard time being a woman. Really hasn't been difficult. That I've had the same problems that most other people. And by the way, people in the band also as you know, are subjected to the same rough treatment.